You know when you come back off holiday and you're like, let's just ease into this because you're still in sort of your mind, still sort of in holiday mode. So I thought we'd start with a nice easy one, a nice easy question, okay? What will heaven look like? Okay, everyone's like, we don't know. It's too early to be dealing with this. No, I wanted to just look today a little bit about the theology of serving and how this links to the theology of heaven and the afterlife and things like that. Does that sound okay? Because we looked at before we went away, I looked at the story of Joseph because he was a prime example of how no matter what season we're in, we can still do something for the glory of God. Does that make sense? So we saw him in different situations. We saw him in a pit where his family betrayed him. We saw him wrongly accused and put in prison. And then we saw him a time later in the palace. But in each situation, he still tried to serve well and faithfully. And that is not an insignificant or easy thing to do. It's easy for us to read those lines, but being in those situations and still having a heart to say, God, I will put you first, is not always easy. Is that okay? Yeah? So I wanted to look at stewardship a little bit. This is a word we don't hear as much today. Stewardship. What does it mean? What is stewardship? See, the theology behind that is, from God's point of view, the Bible says God views as he owns everything. Does that make sense? The earth, everything in it, the universe, that God says, look, I have made creation. Creation is mine. But I will release some of the handles in a way. I will give dominion over to people. Does that make sense? So he gives us some dominion, which is kind of important for us because it means if he's given us some dominion, some stewardship, there's an emphasis on we must do something, or else things might go the wrong way. Yeah? So theologically then, he views as everything is God's, but he puts us in charge of things. And we have the parable of the talents, which I think illustrates some of this nicely. You know, we know the parable. I won't go through it all, but he gives talents, coins to different people, doesn't he? So to one, maybe he gives 5, to another, maybe 4 or 3, or to another 2, to another, maybe 1, something like that. And what the story is about, what we see is those that went away and multiplied those talents. Well, it didn't matter how many they had. When they multiplied it, God was pleased. He said, that's good. You've done a good thing. The issue that came about, which is, I feel a bit sad for the person because it seems reasonable that the one person that decided to just sit on it, you know, they didn't sell it or spend it or do something really irresponsible with it, but they sat on it, they buried it because they thought, I need to keep this safe. God's given me this, so I'm too afraid to do anything with it. What I will do is I'll just keep it safe. And yet when the master comes back, there's this realization, look, why didn't you multiply it? Does that make sense? That can be a hard truth, because what has God given us? What would be in our hands right now? What do we have dominion over? Maybe whether it's a small thing or a large thing, what do you have dominion over right now? What talent has been placed in your hand? And is it something that we are using, that we are aiming to multiply, though that process might take a long time? It's easy to read a story and see multiplication. It might take the whole life to turn 1 talent into 2. But that's a multiplication. That's a good thing. So what are you holding on to? We saw from that parable, it ends with this. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. Psalm 24:1 says this, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. Just a few scriptures going over some of these things. Again, Deuteronomy 8:17-18. You may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands has produced this wealth for me. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives the ability to produce this. Now, we've just been on holiday, as you know, and it's a nice, relaxing time. I mean, it's a different experience with 2 kids, but, there's some grandparents there, so that helps out a lot. But it was just quite nice being in a hotel, right? Some of you have been in hotels before, I'm sure, an all-inclusive hotel. It makes things easy, doesn't it? There is so much convenience involved. Okay, all your meals are just taken care of, right? Everything's just sorted for you. You just make sure you get yourself to the right place at the right time, and you're just looked after. You're taken care of. It's relaxing. And Judah, he really loved it. He was pretty upset to be coming home, which I wasn't expecting him to love it so much. I was like, Judah, you're 3. But he was pretty upset when he knew we were coming home. And he said to me, why can't we stay here forever? He did, really. He said, why can't we stay here forever? And he told us that he was going to stay. We said, well, on this day, we're going to have to fly home. He says, you can fly home. I am staying. So then I had to explain to him how we don't live in hotels. Hotels are just something we come to, but it's convenient. Everything was there, although I did have this moment when I was going to get some water, in the day. You've got to stay hydrated. It's important. And I was by the pool. There's a lot of people around. When you just have one of those moments, you think, why did that happen? So I filled up my water right in the bar area. There's lots of people around. And I took a drink as I started to walk back. And when they say it goes down the wrong way? Yep. I don't know what, this. I rarely do this. What was happening? I took a drink. I walked away. The minute I took a sip, I thought, oh no, I could feel it instantly. I tried my best to keep it in my mouth. Straight away, it comes straight out, dribbles down, and there's people looking at me. How do you recover from that situation? No, I made eye contact with no one. I thought, it is what it is. There's no coming back from that. Don't look at anyone. Completely ignore it and just walk off. I could feel the eyes at the back of me. So there's no coming away from that. I was like, I'm not going to go to that one tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll go to a different one. But everything's easy. It's taken care of. And Judah, he wanted to stay forever. But I had to explain to him, we don't live in the hotel. And it reminded me of a theological point on stewardship. Because when we were back at Bible college, the principal at the time, he had this phrase that he would say that ownership changes everything. And that can be applied to our faith. And sometimes we can treat our faith like we're in the hotel. There's a difference between the hotel and the home, isn't there? Do you act the same in a hotel or the home? No, probably not. We can get these thoughts, and they're not always right, because we should always try and take ownership. But I remember even being in the room thinking, I should clean that up. And then that thought comes in. I thought, oh, wait, I don't need to. It's like, that's not my responsibility. I'm at a hotel. I mean, I did try and clean up a little bit. But it's undeniable. It's unmistakable. There is a different mindset when you are at a hotel compared to at your home. Why? Because the home has ownership. At the end of the day, you're responsible for it. Whether you're renting, paying the bills, or the mortgage, you are still responsible for it. So you will treat that a little bit differently than the hotel. And our principal, he was trying to bring this point across to our faith, with our serving, with this thing we call church. Do we come to it with a lens of ownership, of this is my responsibility? Or do we have many of us maybe will have a season of, it's a hotel, which I think is okay for a season. We need that. People need to be looked after. We need to be fed. We need that time where we're just having a bit of a recharge. But he said, ultimately, we don't live there forever. As nice as it might be, but there's a time that comes where we become stewards, where we contribute in different ways through our actions, through getting involved, through the life we live outside, because stewardship extends beyond these walls as well, the way we operate ourselves in the world. Is that okay? So it's important, and every single one of us, we have some level of stewardship. In the Old Testament, worship was not just music. It says that when they were building houses, when they were building property, they were worshiping. They were putting their hands to work for God. So what is it that in our life that we're doing right now where there's worship, there's devotion, there's stewardship, and it is important that we do that? Is that okay? Yeah? Now, this could be where it gets a little bit more contentious, okay? Because I wanted to look at a picture of heaven, the afterlife. That's a really difficult thing to think about, isn't it? And whenever you research this topic, you are going to find scholars back and forth that will have different opinions, interpretations, and perspectives on what things may or may not look like. Because apart from Jesus, none of us have really been able to go experience that and come back to tell everyone. Does that make sense? So whatever we say, even from this point on, it's like a disclaimer. It's like, honestly, go away, challenge yourself, read about it, research things for yourself. But there is some really important topics that I think scholars, they point at. And when we fix our eyes on eternity and the things to come, I think it really helps with the right now, with the here and now. It's like the best long-term thinking we can ever do. Is anyone good at long-term thinking, planning? Make a decision right now that you might not feel the benefits for 20 or 30 years or something like that. Does anyone think like that? No. You see this all the time when people talk about pensions. You think, the young people think, we've got no need for pensions. What does that matter? Like, I'd rather keep the money for myself and spend it on something else. But there is a day that comes, probably, hopefully, where each person will think, I'm now reaping the rewards of what was before a long time ago. So, listen to this scripture, Matthew 16:27. The Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what they have done. Now, we have to preface, we have to put, first of all, we need to remember, we need to keep the foundation in place. That everything, that salvation is given as a free gift. Yeah. That we put our faith and trust in him, in what was done on the cross, not in our works, not in anything we do, but the fact that our faith and trust is in him. We turned from our old way, our sin, we put our faith and trust in him, in what was done on the cross. And from that moment, he says, you're one with me. Does that make sense? Even if you think back to the cross, where Jesus was on the cross with the thieves, and he said to the one that you will be with me today in paradise. Because there was a recognition. We don't fully know what that looked like in the heart of that individual, but there was some recognition of Jesus' lordship, and that actually it is him that brings this salvation. But this is where it gets really interesting. Because if you've ever looked at this topic, the idea of rewards in heaven become quite problematic, but also it's interesting. Yeah? You with me? You sure you're okay? Yeah? What does that mean? That he will reward each person according to what they have done. Okay, so we know we're in the club, we're in the house, but there's still this idea that we will come face to face with God. The good thing is, he's on our side, he loves us, he's our Father. But there's still this process that will take place. Now this one, a little bit scary. Don't view it through a lens of being scared, okay? But 2 Corinthians 5-10. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each of us may receive what is due for the things done while in the body. It's interesting though, right? Does it intrigue anyone else? It's like it's just what is he even thinking about while he's on holiday? It's a topic I think we don't really give that much attention to. So a lot of Christian theology, fundamentally, though that you'll always find some kind of variation, but fundamentally when we think of heaven, that actually the age to come talks about a restored earth, and God will restore the earth, and that each person who comes to him, who is resurrected through him, will have some kind of physical body. So we'll be on this restored earth, physical body. Then what? What do? We're just here. We're like, hi Pam, remember us in the old days? What do? It's interesting, isn't it? See, some scholars, they think the Bible points to that, yes, there'll be a lot of worship and a lot of devotion going on, but they point to that actually in the new age to come, there may well be things for us to do. There may be some level of responsibilities that are given out. Now, it's hard to know what that will look like because things will be so different and there will be no sin to entangle any of that or warp any of that. But this idea that there will be some responsibilities to do. What would that look like? Because we'll have an eternity to think of this. You know, I remember when I was looking at a preacher and they were talking about space. And I love space because to me, it resets my perspective. Whenever I get too focused on the here or now, just go off, spend 30 minutes trying to learn about space or something. And it is astounding how large we believe the universe is. Does that make sense? It is difficult to actually conceptualize just how much we believe is out there right now, that we just can probably never get to, just way beyond our grasp, even with our wildest technology, you know, whatever you're into, Star Wars, Star Trek, who knows, even with that level of technology, the vast majority of the universe is still just probably going to be locked off. There's a good chance you'll never even leave your own galaxy. And there are potentially, so they say, as if their science is right, billions upon billions of other galaxies separated by this vast nothingness of dark space. A period of space where there aren't even stars shining. It's just this empty void where eventually there'll be another galaxy dotted around and another and another and another. Does that make sense? Why does it reset my perspective? Because as far as we're aware, all of that is real. It's right there, right now. So maybe I go on to Monday morning and I'm thinking about Monday morning's problems, but actually I'm reminded that the God who put all that into being is right there with us. That the God who, even now, if he can be everywhere at all time, he might be at the other side of the universe as well, he is still right here with me. And this is just a complete theory. So, you know, I remember one scholar was saying, how amazing would it be if in the new age, when we have this restored earth, that maybe there will be something to do out there? What if there's a blank canvas and that God's kingdom won't just stop right here? Because you will be in a restored body, whatever that looks like, something not limited by sin and the world. Who knows what things you'll be able to do? You look at what the angels can do, the things they have access to. I told you it can get weird when you spend enough time thinking about this stuff. But I think it helps us with our here and now. The truth is, none of us really know what it will look like, what it will be like, and there will always be theological, philosophical questions and issues for us. But I think there is a principle there that God tells us to spend some time thinking about this. Because at the end of the day, whatever we experience in this life, however real, however important it is, however much focus it has, it will be such a tiny amount in the measurement of eternity, won't it? I remember a preacher trying to illustrate this, and he had this rope, and he stretched it out across the room, and he said, I want you to now imagine that this rope will loop the world once, right back to here. And he had this little piece of red tape that he put on the edge of the rope. And he said, this red tape right here represents our life right now, the here and now. And he could put little markings on it. And this was like my 20th birthday, just put that on there. This was when I had my first kid, would put that on there. And you could put these life markers on. He said, but then when you get to the end of that red tape, eternity starts. And that rope, not only does it loop the world once, according to Christian theology, that rope actually never ends. And whatever consciousness we will have available in eternity, I'm sure if we look back, we'll think, do you know what? I'm so glad that when I was just in my little bit of red tape, I didn't succumb to the pressures of the day. That I didn't turn my back on my God because it wasn't popular or trendy at the time, that I just stayed faithful during that tiny little blip of time that then brings you into eternity. You know, when you wake up from a dream sometimes, maybe a bad dream can be more striking, but you know when you wake up, have you had that moment? You have those few seconds of relief. Have you ever experienced that where you think, oh, thank goodness that was just a dream? Have you ever had that? No, maybe I've got quite a restless subconscious. You know, if I've had a bad dream and there can be a moment I wake up and I think, oh my goodness, think for a split second, thank goodness that was just a dream. And equally, sometimes if it's been a great dream, you wake up, you're like, oh no, I'm still here. But I just wonder sometimes, you know, when we pass from point A to point B, that whatever we're facing, whatever challenges we have right now, they're really real to us right now. And we never diminish them because they are our struggles right now. But I believe one day there will come a point just like waking up from that bad dream. And we will just feel those different layers just move off of us, pull away. That anxiety just stripped away, that fear stripped away. And we'll just enter into this new world. Now, Matthew 19:28 says this, truly I tell you, at the renewal of all things, you who have followed me will all sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. So he's talking to his disciples, his apostles, and he says that you who have followed me, you will sit on 12 thrones. So we know there's the throne of God that will be above all thrones. And Revelation is very descriptive and has a lot of imagery to say about that. But then Jesus is saying there will also be these 12 thrones that the disciples, the apostles will sit on. And they will have authority to judge the tribes. What does that mean? What does that look like? Because if authority is given to them, what authority will be given to me or you? Maybe not the same level. I think those thrones are taken. I don't think anyone's going to be trying to kick those off their thrones, okay? But they're taken. But doesn't that just give us this idea of roles, responsibilities, something to do? Maybe it's all just imagery, allegory. Some scholars will say that. Some will say it's literal. And when it says there's a throne, there will be a throne. See, the Bible also said to be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others, to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. And it talks about how, when we do things, and this, there's a lot of stuff you'd have to unpack for this, because I don't think it's saying never do anything good in front of people. But I think God's saying, look, there's a heart, there's a motive behind things. And he said when he looked at the Pharisees, if they were standing on the street corner or doing something good purely to be seen by others, he said, look, at the end of the day, they've received their reward in full. That will be it. And we can think that's a bit harsh. But let's look at the other end, the encouragement that comes. Because what is he saying there? He's saying, when you think no one's seen, he says, I've seen. When you've done something, when you've shared something, when you've helped someone, and you know what, maybe you've not had the camera. That's the age we live in now, isn't it? It's like, before I do this, let me just get a picture of this. Let's get a TikTok of this, and then we'll do it. He says, look, no. When you've done something in secret, when you've done something that's hidden, I see. The encouragement is, don't worry. Don't sit there thinking, but God, I see all these things happening for this person, but I'm trying to do the best I can, God. Do you see me? And he says, look, I see you. I see everything that you've done, every action, every kind word, every selfless thing that you have done. I see it. The world might never see. The world might never even know, but I know. And I've got it all. I've got it all right here. And one day we will celebrate each and every thing that we do. I remember a preacher talking about this, and he said, I think we will be so surprised by, firstly, maybe who we see there, right there with us, but secondly, because they had this same sort of view, that they will be so surprised by who is doing what in the new age. Because we could look at people right now on earth and think, well, they're great. They've got amazing things going off. They're going to have a throne just under the 12 thrones, all right? There'll be the 12 thrones, and then there'll be their throne because they're so good. And he was saying, actually, that might not be the case at all. And equally, I wonder, the people that have never grown in notoriety here, I wonder what missionaries around the world right now that maybe we've never heard of, never will, I wonder what they will be doing. I wonder what they will be responsible for in the new age. This idea that what we do right now here is kind of like a training room.